All right, everybody. Really important topic in today's webinar: women, food, and breast cancer. So, as usual, I got a lot to present to you on this very important topic, and I'm going to wait for people to get on board. There's a little bit of delay on my end as to when you're all here, whoever's going to be attending. So, an important lecture. I was thinking I always start with various anecdotes about certain things that are going on, or little stories from the past or whatever. It occurred to me this morning, looking at some of the comments from recent Facebook posts, that a lot of social media reminds me of that song by the Ramones, That's What I Like About You, especially that verse that goes, "Keep on whispering in my ear, tell me all the things that I want to hear, because it's true, that's what I like about you." And social media, what it likes about you, what people like when they hit like, is keep whispering in their ear things that they want to hear because it's true. That's what they like about you. So you can even challenge people's thoughts on social media as long as you don't challenge their belief systems. When you challenge their belief systems, things get a little awkward. For instance, I did a post yesterday, and I'll get into that. But one of the people that responded to the post said, I used to look forward to your posts until you started all this vegan bleep, bleep, bleep. I'm out of here. And then basically, okay. So that made me laugh in terms of challenging someone's belief system with that post. You can challenge people's thoughts, but keep whispering in their ear things that they want to hear because that's what they like about you on social media, but never challenge their belief systems or they go awry. So I did this post last night, more about North American research to do with people's diet lifestyles and the relationship to being overweight, ideal weight, or obese. And sure enough, the point, they used BMI's, body mass index, and basically what they found was the more meat people ate in their diet lifestyle, the heavier they tended to be. The more flexitarian someone was, the lighter. And of course, their conclusion was if someone was vegan, they were tended to be the people who were pretty much the only population bases that were at ideal body weight. So what struck me when looking at some of the hostile comments and some of the critique is, here's what I noticed that other people don't notice, and it's too bad. I wish people would have commented on my behalf. But of all the people who came in and wanted to critique, a couple bodybuilders, of course, they don't need to do research because they have juice-produced 20-inch arms, so what they say should matter, blah, blah, blah. But in that research, when people wanted to criticize the research that the only people at an ideal body weight BMI-wise were vegans, and that the more meat people reported to eat, the heavier they tended to be, leading from overweight to obesity, as much as people wanted to get hostile about it or disagree with it, no one offered any research to the contrary, which is what I do. I present the research, and all these people that wanted to disagree and make points, no one offered, no one said, well, here's some research, Scott, that says that meat eaters actually have better BMIs and are leaner than vegetarians or vegans. No one offered any research that said meat eaters are lean and healthy. No one offered any research along the lines to counteract what they didn't like about the research that I posted. So very, very interesting to me, and some that, like I said in a previous webinar, angry omnivores, people who just got downright hostile and aren't going to follow me anymore. And here's the difference between low-level awareness consciousness and higher-level awareness consciousness. Like I said, lower-level consciousness is the Ramones song, "Keep whispering in my ear, tell me all the things that I want to hear because that's what I like about you on social media, but don't challenge my belief systems." Higher levels of consciousness and awareness are people who say, educate me and let me decide for myself, which is what I've been doing for the past several months, which is why I ended up going vegan myself, an open mind to the research and predominance of the research, overwhelming nature of the research. And that's what led to where we're at. So, yeah. So I just found it ironic. I wish people would have commented in the comment section in support of me. Well, where's your research saying meat eaters have the lower BMIs or are healthier? I just present the research, and then people don't like it, and they run away and shut off. So there's a difference between higher level thinking and lower level thinking. And again, it just reminds me of that Ramones song, "Keep whispering in my ear and tell me all the things that I want to hear," because it's true. That's what I like about you. And if you don't tell me that and you challenge my belief system, then screw you. I won't like you anymore. And that's fine. So I'm going to continue presenting the research. And today is off to women, food, and breast cancer. Man, I got a lot to get to. So I hope you guys will hit your share buttons, get some people on board. Women need to listen to this. Husbands and spouses need to listen to this. And we need to get the word out there. So definitely going to get out there. But please hit your share buttons and get people on board. And we'll start with the webinar right now. But hopefully what I said made sense, and hopefully you guys can see my post loud and clear. So I'm going to hide that, and I am going to get to the research. So hopefully you guys can see that. Women, food, and breast cancer. Let's start with some general stuff. First, remember, going vegan reduces the risk of all-cause mortality. Has to do with all kinds of stuff. This is well established. I presented this research before in Modern Nutrition and Health and Disease. I'm just seeing good comments here. I'll get to your comments, folks. This is just such an important lecture. I'm gonna do a university type lecture here and get to you guys at the end. But I see some good comments already. Yeah, so that's important. So let's start with the general that going vegan reduces the risk of all-cause mortality, all risks of dying. So not only does a plant-based diet equal lower body weights and lower fat percentages, which is what I posted last night, and I've posted all kinds of different research on that, but the American Institute for Cancer Research, and we're talking about breast cancer here, a respected authority regarding diet and cancer said this, and I quote in red: "Diets that revolve around whole plant foods, vegetables, whole grains, fruits, and beans cut the risk of many cancers and other diseases as well." So I just added this note at the bottom. What it's like being on top or ahead of the research, I have to say, and boom. And I'll go to the next slide. And the reason I'm saying that is because low carbs equals a higher risk of dying. And breaking news, just as I was preparing this to go live, a client wrote me and said he got a news alert on his phone, and he sent me the link. And if all you guys want to go search that right now, just do a Google search and put in the Google search "new study" and then put in quotes, "Atkins diet leads to heart failure," or something along those lines, and you will get the latest research that comes down the pike. So all I have to say about that, the breaking news as I'm going live, funny how synchronicity works, but I just say, and boom. So this diet directly links heart failure to high protein. This new study on Atkins, which they should have said keto, because keto is just fancier, updated version of Atkins. But this is a study that directly links heart failure to high protein diets. And what was my live webinar about last week? Boom, shakalaka, boom, boom. Protein con job. So we see everything coming along the lines of where the research is headed, where the research is picking up. So if you want to do a Google search on that, then you can post the link, but it's pretty much all over the internet right now. So again, new study, and then in quotation marks, Atkins diet leads to heart failure. And basically what they did is they talked about high protein diets, and I'm going to get into that as well. So what we want to say here is lower carbs, higher risk of dying. So the first line in the conclusion here, low carbohydrate diets were associated with significantly higher risk of all-cause mortality. So that's very, very important. Like I said, I'm going to start general here with women, food, and breast cancer. And of course, we see the flip side of that, a vegan diet equals lower risk of disease from the Journal of American Diet Association. What we see here, That's 2008. And we see there is increasing evidence that dietary factors in plant-based diets are important in the prevention of chronic disease. This study examined protective elements, blah, 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 and factors, risk factors, pathogenic factors of saturated fats, cholesterol in very low-fat vegan diets. And then, of course, the very end here is these results suggest that a low-fat vegan diet can be useful in increasing intake of protective nutrients and phytochemicals and minimizing intake of dietary factors implicated in chronic diseases. So that would include breast cancer. I'm going to get real specific into the breast cancer in a minute, but I'm just setting up the argument and what the research shows all over the place. So what we see here, lower body weights also equals less disease risk. That's another reason I posted the research from last night that people got so hostile about, that vegans tend to have the lower BMIs and be leaner all around. And the conclusions here are that, if you read the conclusion right there, these findings suggest vegetarian diets are nutrient dense, consistent with dietary guidelines, and could be recommended for weight management without compromising diet quality. And of course, with that weight control comes less risk of disease. So we're already setting up an argument. So what turns out now in terms of following now the breast cancer, we're going to start seeing fiber, and fiber. And that's what I want to get to here, is that the next thing is that we see all this nonsensical advice out there that low carbs are the way to go for pre and postmenopausal women. I get letters about it all the time. And we'll see that this is pretty much nonsense. Yale research and other abundant research, and I'm going to show you a bunch of it. I might not get to all of it because I added some at the end that came to me by email from a researcher, and I may or may not be able to get to that. So hopefully you guys are getting with the program here. And as you can see, we really want to get to showing fiber, and fiber. I don't know why that disappeared. Maybe I hit the... But anyway, Yale research shows that fiber consumption, which comes only from carbs, is directly related to lower risks of breast cancer, specifically breast cancer. And the more fiber consumed, the lower the risk, up to almost 65% less risk than for meat eaters or those who don't eat much fiber, who are in fact protein eaters. So the benefits of fiber are even more definitive for the harder to treat types of breast cancer as well. So very, very important that we get on the fiber train. And we'll look at some of the research. This one from European Journal of Nutrition in 2013, dietary fiber intake and risk of breast cancer by menopausal and estrogen receptor status. So you see the first line in the results. Among premenopausal women, high intake of soluble fiber was associated with a significantly reduced risk of breast cancer. And then, of course, we see the first line in the conclusion. The results from this study show that dietary soluble fiber intake is associated with a significantly reduced risk of estrogen receptor status, breast cancer among premenopausal women. Additional studies with larger sizes are needed, blah, blah, blah. So we're starting to see the benefits of fiber. So by all means, wait, there's more. From that same study, postmenopausal women on a high fiber diet had an 85% lower odds of getting the most pernicious kind of breast cancer. Boom, shakalaka. So I wish women would stop buying into low carb lies and nonsense. Research here, dietary fiber intake and risk of breast cancer by menopausal and estrogen receptor status, European Journal of Nutrition, which I just posted. And then dietary factors and risk of breast cancer, combined analysis of 12 case control studies, Journal of National Cancer Institute, and then dietary fiber intake, risk of breast cancer, a meta-analysis of prospective cohort studies, American Journal of Nutrition. So we see going all the way from the 90s to modern day, and then dietary fiber and breast cancer risk, a systematic review and meta-analysis of prospective studies from annual oncology research. And as you can see, we have research from various fields, all coming to similar conclusions. And we see that this is consistent with high fiber intake. So there's the Journal of National Cancer Institute right there. And the first line, we conducted a combined analysis of original data to evaluate the consistency of 12 case control studies of diet and breast cancer. Our analysis shows a consistent, statistically significant positive association between breast cancer risk and saturated fat intake in postmenopausal women. So very, very important that we're crossing the perspective premenopausal, perimenopausal, menopausal. The benefits of fiber certainly outweigh the benefits of any kind of benefits you're going to find in any kind of low carb approach. So very important. Hopefully you're hitting your share buttons, ladies. Get this message out there. So, and then the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, 2011, dietary fiber intake and risk of breast cancer, meta-analysis, prospective cohort studies. Like I said, these are my favorite kind of studies. So this one in 2011, we see the objective here in the study. We aimed to examine the association between dietary fiber intake and risk of breast cancer by conducting a meta-analysis of prospective cohort studies. And again, their conclusion, this meta-analysis provides evidence of a significant inverse dose response associated between dietary fiber intake and breast cancer risk. What an inverse dose response means is the higher the fiber, the lower the risk, the lower the fiber, the higher the risk. So, and that's from the American Journal of Nutrition as well. So this is important stuff, folks. People oftentimes, they just assume that diet doesn't have a whole lot to do with anything, and diet has a whole lot to do with everything. When you get to be my age, you see with your own eyes the effects of diet lifestyles when you just watch people as they age, and you can pretty much predict who's eating what kind of foods, whether it's junk, whether it's meat, whatever. But in the Journal of Oncology here, 2012, what we see here is the background. Evidence from case control studies suggests that dietary fiber may be inversely related to breast cancer risk. Unclear if this is supported by prospective data. We conducted a systematic review and meta-analysis of the evidence from prospective studies. And then what you see there in their conclusion, in this meta-analysis, which is my favorite kind of analysis and research of prospective studies, there was an inverse association between dietary fiber intake and breast cancer risk. So once again, the more dietary fiber someone eats, the less breast cancer risk. The less dietary fiber someone eats, the greater is the breast cancer risk. So I don't think that should be understated. I think it should be overstated given what we have in modern world in terms of breast cancer. So what you do eat also equals what you don't eat. These researchers also pointed out that the benefits of fiber and plant-based foods for breast cancer prevention may also have a lot to do with the fact that, and here you see in bold, the more plant-based food consumed, the less animal food is consumed, and that becomes an important factor of what's inclusive in the diet in higher proportions excludes things from the diet in lower proportions, and that will be associated with less risk of breast cancer or higher risk of breast cancer. So what someone is not eating or eating less of is also a factor in breast cancer prevention and overall health. So more beans and lentils and chickpeas and oatmeal and brown rice and fruits and vegetables, the less likely someone is eating red meat and other animal sources. So their exact quote in the study was, an increased consumption of fiber from foods of plant origin may also reflect a reduced consumption of foods of animal origin. So that's from the study that I already posted, European Journal of Nutrition 2013. Dietary fiber intake and risk of breast cancer by menopausal and estrogen receptor status. Really important stuff. So basically what they're saying is crowd out animal sources of food and be inclusive of plant-based sources of food, and you decrease breast cancer risk. So here's some relevant numbers though, and we need to pay slight attention to the numbers. So to reduce breast cancer risk, the more fiber, the better. In fact, reduced risk from diet strategy doesn't even happen until at least 25 grams minimum of fiber per day is consumed. And yet the average woman in the US eats less than 15 grams of fiber per day, likely even less if she's trying to go low carbs or keto or Atkins or other nonsense. So another key point here, we're talking about eating fiber, not swallowing fiber supplements. And even Atkins and other low carb liars acknowledge the lack of fiber is an issue on their diets. And that seems to be the understatement of the century. And given the breaking news that came just as I was going live here about Atkins leading to heart failure, I think we're going to see more and more about how animal foods crowd out plant foods of fiber origin and the consequences of that. So even the average self-described vegetarian plant-based eater only gets about 25 grams of fiber per day. And remember, to start reducing the risk of breast cancer, we need a 25 gram minimum. Actual conscious vegetarians average about 37 grams of fiber per day, so well above the minimum. And then, as again, research continues to show, actual vegans are ahead of the curve. Again, average about 46 grams of fiber intake per day, almost twice the healthy minimum. Boom. Once again, we see associations with reduced risk of cancer, in particular breast cancer. So here we see that if you really want to pay attention, good research states whole food, plant-based diets, even when they're assigned to medical intervention to reverse chronic disease, these diets aim to achieve about 60 grams or more of fiber per day. So if you're going to measure anything, and that's why I put this in bold, in your diet, make it fiber intake in grams, not protein grams, not calories, and not macros. Boom, shakalaka-laka. If you start measuring fiber intake in an effort to get it as high as you can, then you will find no need to be measuring these other indicators, which have only led to confusion and frustration in the past anyway, when it comes to a cosmetically advantaged physique or losing weight and keeping it off. So now we see also reduced risk of various cancers, in particular breast cancer. So very important. Let's look at the Journal of Nutrition 2012. So as you can see here, the title, Filling America's Fiber Intake Gap, a summary of a roundtable to probe realistic solutions with a focus on grain-based foods. So again, very, very important here. What you see in the abstract, current fiber intakes are alarmingly low with long-term implications for public health related to risk of coronary heart disease, stroke, hypertension, gastrointestinal disorders, obesity, and a continuum of metabolic dysfunctions, including prediabetes, type 2 diabetes. Eating patterns high in certain fibers are known to lower LDL cholesterol and blood pressure, lower blood glucose, and decrease insulin resistance. And then you see help with weight loss and maintenance, improved bowel regularity, and gastrointestinal health, with 90% of adults and children fall short of meeting their daily fiber recommendations. That's pretty heavy duty stuff, especially when we start thinking about things like prevention. And again, as Ben Franklin said, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. And when it comes to breast cancer, if you know anyone who has suffered, then you would go out of your way to try to prevent such an event from happening. And as we see here, the research is once again overwhelming in terms of plant-based whole food dieting, and the less meat you can eat and crowd out, then the better. So very, very important. Get your fiber on, get your fiber in. American Journal of Clinical Nutrition 2011, dietary fiber intake and risk of breast cancer. Here we go, specifically about breast cancer. A meta-analysis of prospective cohort studies, as I said earlier, very, very important. And the objective here, they aim to examine the association between dietary fiber intake and risk of breast cancer by conducting a meta-analysis of prospective cohort studies. And what you see in the conclusion, as I said, this meta-analysis provides evidence, significant inverse dose response associated between dietary fiber intake and breast cancer risk. So again, if you're going to measure anything in your diet, make it be the grams of fiber you're getting in, and make it be less about calories, less about protein, and, up the plant foods, which means upping the carbs. So soluble fiber sources, I just jotted a few down. And the health benefits include heart protection inside your digestive system. Soluble fiber attaches to cholesterol particles, takes them out of the body, helping to reduce overall cholesterol levels and risk of heart disease. Oatmeal may offer the most heart protection, but in general, it's one of those where the more additive effect, so the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Diabetes protection, because soluble fiber isn't well absorbed, it doesn't contribute to blood sugar spikes that can put you at risk for type 2 diabetes and heart disease. And if you already have type 1 or 2, soluble fiber can even help your condition, keep your condition under control. Weight loss, of course, soluble fiber, as I posted yesterday, can also help you get to or stay at a healthy weight by keeping you feeling full without adding many calories to your diet. And again, healthy bowel movements and intestinal health. Soluble fiber soaks up water as it passes through your system, which helps bulk up your stool and guard against constipation, diarrhea. In fact, most fiber supplements contain mostly soluble fiber, but you want to eat your fiber, which means getting your carbs as high as you can, your fats as low as you can. And again, you do all kinds of healthy things for your body, but you also look good, feel good, and are doing a healthy thing in terms of disease prevention. So insoluble fiber sources, seeds, skins of fruit. So always eat your peels. When I eat an apple, I eat the whole thing. I eat the core, I eat the seeds. Whole wheat bread, brown rice, the health benefits, weight loss, again, digestive health, and again, decreased risk of breast cancer. So let's look at that in a graph. What don't you see in this graph? Here are variable sources, good sources of fiber, high fiber fruits, veggies, beans, nuts, and seeds. What don't you see here in this graph? You don't see protein. You don't see what we consider protein, animal sources of protein, and boom, shakalaka-laka. So you need to consider these sources, include these and as much of these as you want. And an interesting side note here, a lot of people who are saying they're getting on my 6-day vegan diet movement. I didn't know it was a movement, but I'm okay with that. I'm happy about that. What you will find after you've been on it for a while is really, really increased metabolic optimization, and that you will have to constantly increase your calories so you get to eat more, not less, whereas a protein-based diet is all about controlling what you eat and eating less, not more, which makes it hard to live in the real world. But we're getting back to breast cancer. So here's where it gets really interesting. Hit your share buttons, get people on board, and hopefully you will find this very interesting. Is there another nutritional angel in the battle to prevent breast cancer? Well, believe it or not, yes, there is. And I'm just going to post it right here, right now. And it is soy, oh boy. So let's just look at that now for interesting enough and see what the research has to say. Let them eat soy. In this following study, soy intake can lead to up to 60% less risk of breast cancer in premenopausal women. And that's in the study Adolescent and Adult Soy Food Intake and Breast Cancer Risk results from the Shanghai Women's Health Food Study, American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, 2009. And there it is right there. And what did I write in my notes here? So the title, again, Adolescent and Adult Soy Food Intake and Breast Cancer Risk. And the results there, we look at the background. Soy food is a rich source of isoflavones, a class of phytoestrogens that has both anti-estrogenic and anti-carcinogenic properties. So again, what is the worst risk factor for breast cancer? It's estrogenic factors. And as we see here in soy, the phytoestrogens are in soy are anti-estrogenic and actually anti-carcinogenic as well, cancer causing. So the objective here, as you see, was to evaluate the association of adult and adolescent soy food intake with breast cancer risk in a cohort study of over 73,000 women who participated in the study. And the conclusion is the large population-based prospective cohort study provides strong evidence of a protective effect of soy food intake against premenopausal breast cancer. Protective effect of soy food. Boom. All right. So again, we can see that a lot of pop culture knowledge is actually inaccurate. So we want to take a look at these things and make sure that we have it right. And now here is sort of a side move that I want to show you about the Journal of National Cancer: high and low fat dairy intake, recurrence and mortality after breast cancer risk diagnosis. And this is important because their conclusion: intake of high fat dairy, not low fat dairy, which other studies show the opposite, was related to higher risk of mortality after breast cancer diagnosis. And the findings here: 49% increase in death with high-fat dairy products, and yet you'll see the sponsor and pink ribbons on a whole lot of dairy products like Denon yogurt, et cetera, et cetera. Tiffany, you're actually incorrect there, saying I stay away from soy due to estrogen, etc., and don't want to eat all the pretend vegan foods. I get you there, but actually staying away from soy, I just said it has protective effects. It's not the kind of estrogen that leads to breast cancer. It's the kind of estrogen that is protective against breast cancer. Let me go back here. Protective effect of soy food right there, a class of phytoestrogens in soy that has both anti-estrogenic, anti-carcinogenic effects. The estrogen in soy is the anti-estrogen. Phytoestrogens in soy are actually protective. They are not actually risk factors. They're protective factors, unlike what we see here, which dairy. So a lot of people are avoiding, especially ladies, are avoiding soy and eating yogurt. And you have to wonder if that is sound or not. So JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association, they reviewed the Adventist study that showed that female vegans had the lowest risk of breast cancer, but lacto-ovo vegetarians who have dairy products showed a 33% increased risk compared to the vegans, likely due to dairy consumption and also likely due to increases in IGF-1 from protein. And if you want to look up Dr. Michael Clapper or Dr. Michael Greger, soy protects against breast cancer. I'll just narrow down what they had to say. Boom, shakalaka-laka. So once again, pop culture knowledge is actually incorrect when it comes to soy, and I'll try to get there. So soy versus dairy. Dairy is the danger, not soy. And there's more to consider here as well. What about exposure to the harmful exogenous estrogens? Maybe your commercial Greek yogurt isn't all that great after all. As we see here, this quote: exposure to exogenous estrogen through intake of commercial milk from pregnant cows in Pediatric International 2010. In this study, the researchers found that blood levels of the harmful type of estrogens, the type that Tiffany, you say you want to avoid, the harmful type of estrogens actually spike when you eat dairy, spiked in both sexes, a 25% spike in estrogen, but also lowered testosterone levels in men. So interesting, ironically, men are mistakenly concerned with estrogenic effects of soy when they should pay more attention to how much dairy they consume, because what we see here, and the researchers showed that 25% spike in the bad kind of estrogen from commercial milk, but also lowered testosterone levels in men, which is something to consider. This is the research right here. And as you can see, the background, and let me read this to you. Modern genetically improved dairy cows continue to lactate through out almost the entire pregnancy. Therefore, recent commercial cow's milk contains large amounts of estrogens and progesterone. With regard to exposure of pre-pubertal children to exogenous estrogens, these authors are particularly concerned about commercial milk produced from pregnant cows. The purpose of the present study was therefore to examine concentrations of serum and urine sex hormones after the intake of cow's milk. And then you see down here in the conclusion, the present data on men and children indicate that estrogens in milk were absorbed and gonadotropin secretion was suppressed, followed by a decrease in testosterone secretion. Sexual maturation of prepubertal children could be affected by the ordinary intake of cow's milk. So it's not even if you're having more cow's milk than you need, even the ordinary intake of cow's milk leads to estrogen issues that are harmful and potentially increase the risk of cancers. So very, very important. Tiffany's just asking how soy affects male testosterone levels when consumed on a 100% plant-based diet with no dairy. There is no aversion to soy. Tiffany, I'm doing a webinar coming soon, 3 or 4 weeks from now, on sex hormones and diet. And I will be addressing that there. But really, what men should be addressing, what we see here is a decrease in testosterone in men from dairy products. And what men should really be addressing is the estrogens in dairy, not soy. So what we see here, the phytoestrogens in soy are protective. They are good for you. They are healthy and health promotive and health protective. And in connection with the fiber argument that I made previously, soybeans are also a good source of fiber. So boom, double boom, shakalaka, boom, boom, in terms of soy versus what we call pop culture knowledge and why everyone is so paranoid about soy. And yet it's the exposure to exogenous estrogens in dairy that increases the risk. Cosmetically speaking, I go back to when I trained high-level bodybuilders, etc. This could be another reason why we always cut out dairy in pre-competition diets, because we always known that dairy was not cosmetically friendly for physique enhancement. And maybe that had to do with side effects of estrogenic effects in dairy that made someone more waterlogged looking in terms of getting a contest prep ready. So what we see here, Tiffany, is that dairy is the actual bigger risk factor affecting and suppressing male testosterone levels than soy ever could be. So that's a very important thing as well. But there's another take-home point, and the take-home point in all of this is one of overnutrition, especially in terms of protein intake in general, and animal protein and saturated fats in particular. And the lesson is it's the dose that makes the disease. In other words, too much of something is now in our modern environment a lot worse than not enough of something else. So here's some soy sources. The best sources, unprocessed, of course: soybeans, soy nuts, edamame, tempeh, tofu, miso, soy nut butter, and soy milk. I've recently, on my refeed days, been enjoying soy milk and also my soy alternative for coffee cream. I finally got off that. I like the taste of the soy coffee cream alternative. I didn't like the almond milk coffee cream alternative. I found it suppressed the taste of the coffee. And then the soy faux foods that Tiffany was talking about before. There's a lot of soy faux foods, that are used that I would have on a refeed day, on a junk day. And pretty much you can get anything version of soy that is trying to mimic animal-based foods. But there's your good sources of soy. So soy, get it into you, but wait, there's more. And although not breast cancer related, the topic of this webinar, another woman's concern is ovarian cancer. Breast cancer and ovarian cancer are very scary things to women. So once again, what we see here, soy to the rescue, and the effects of soy foods on ovarian function in premenopausal women from the British Journal of Cancer 2000. And their quote: supplementation using traditional soy foods reduces serum estradiol levels. This is the harmful kind of estradiol among participants. So not just does soy have protective elements against breast cancer, but now we see here also reduces serum estradiol levels associated with ovarian cancer as well. And there's the research right there. So here's the study, effects of soy foods on ovarian function in premenopausal women. I did get sent the actual study, and it is more for scientists, to scientists, so it's very, very, technical, and I didn't want to include all that. So methionine restriction, we also need to discuss methionine restriction. Methionine, however you want to say it, is an essential amino acid, and its positive effects, which is another plus for soy. So animal foods tend to be higher in methionine, and that increases risk of various cancers, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, etc. I'll refer to other research in a second, but to quote Matthew Adcock, who's a researcher in cellular biology, he's a pharmacist. We go back and forth on email. He sent me a bunch of studies that were way too technical to include here, but were really, really good, and people should read them. This is just quoting him now. The conclusions are simple. Don't eat animal protein, or it will alter your GI flora and increase your chances for cancer and disease. But nobody wants to hear that, as I started this lecture with to begin with. So fiber in soy and fiber to reduce breast cancer risk. What does this mean between the lines as well? Well, fiber is only found in carbs, so the more carbs, the better. As you add more fiber carbs, you crowd out animal proteins and animal fats, which is another plus. Then if you include soy foods as plant protein sources, you add even more fiber and crowd out even more animal proteins, and you lower breast cancer risk and ovarian cancer risk and get the added protective effects of soy as well. So boom, shakalaka laka, boom, boom. So diet and breast cancer risk. So the long story short, this is more from Matthew in email to me. Cancer is a polyamine-based disease. Polyamines, just break that word down. Amines comes from the word amino, which is amino acids. Poly means many, so figure that one out. Are produced from increased methionine intake, which comes from eating animal protein. And then anyone with cancer or high risk for it would benefit greatly from not eating animal protein. Cancer cells are also surrounded by a layer of hyperglycemia and hyperacidity. This prevents the immune response from getting to the cancer cells and removing them. And the point I want to make here is that a lot of confusion with keto dieters about the nature of cancer cells and the hyperglycemia and hyperacidity surrounding them. They will say, well, lower hyper meaning too much, glycemia means sugar, but they say if you lower, of course, your carbs, then you lower the glycemic effect on hyperglycemia around the cancer cells, which is actually misinformation. It's actually the hyperacidity, which is why restricting methionine actually works, and that's very important. So Matthew was quick to add, we know that proteins contain amino acids and are acidic. That comes before the hyperglycemia. This is a problem with cancer, as our cellular buffering abilities can become overburdened. And then this breast cancer gene is a major player in breast cancer, but so is methylation. Cancer is a hypermethylation in a system of hypomethylation. That's a lot of academic stuff, but basically it means one of the reasons methionine restriction works is because of the hyperacidity associated with protein and everything else. So that's really, really important. So hopefully that made sense to you guys. I'm going to get to your comments, and hopefully you're hitting your share buttons, and let's get some people on board. I do have more stuff to share, but going back to the beginning of the lecture, Lydia is just saying when I talked about people who have their nose out of joint, because a lot of people say, tell me all the things that I want to hear, because it's true. That's what I like about you. Lydia's just saying sometimes we have to let people out of the car to let other people in who want to go on the journey with us. And I think that's fair. And And again, higher levels of consciousness say, educate me and let me decide for myself. Lower levels of consciousness say, don't threaten my belief system. And again, that post that I was talking about yesterday, that vegans are the only ones with ideal body weight if you're using BMI, no one that criticized that and had harsh things to say about that post, not one single person offered any research in opposition, because there isn't any. And not to mention the kind of people commenting probably aren't researchers anyway. But there is no research that says people who eat meat tend to have better body mass index profiles than vegans or vegetarians. That study doesn't exist because that's not likely possible. And Dominal is just saying, all the years I've followed you, you've always promoted research. If someone doesn't agree, then they are welcome to do their research. My point exactly. I'm always okay with being pointed out that I'm wrong, but do it with research. Don't do it with la 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 la. I can't hear you, and all that kind of stuff, and the profanity laced stuff I got yesterday that people aren't going to follow me anymore. Really, I'm following the research. So what is so offensive about following the research? This is where people get hostile when you threaten their belief systems, and that's too bad. Another person said the way I used to be on Facebook was way more open-minded, but they don't leave room for someone evolving. I think I'm way more open-minded now because now I'm presenting you with the research. And of course, if people don't like the research and they don't have an alternative research to argue with you, then of course they either attack you, as in ad hominem attacks, or they attack the research in an unfounded way with anecdotal evidence like, I'm a bodybuilder and I eat meat and I'm lean, so screw you. Yeah, that's a real profound argument. Obviously not the place for you would be on my website or my webinar. So, sorry, Jennifer's just saying the hubs have been plant-based for over a month now, feel amazing. Thank you for sharing this information. Yeah, it really, okay, so the topic of this webinar is women, food, and breast cancer, and then we see ovarian cancer, we see protective effects of soy, et cetera, et cetera. So we list all these things, but what's missing in the listing is something that Jennifer's pointing out, is the way you end up feeling. Not only do you feel better, I told Andy that he should start a project and call it Ripped Without Trying, because you don't have to crunch any numbers. If you're going to crunch any numbers, make it be fiber, as I've said here, and then let the rest go, and you'll end up increasing your calories because you'll have to, and you'll end up just getting leaner and leaner. And for people with food and eating issues, you'll be able to let go of them because you no longer have to obsess about it. But Jennifer is right. It's the way you feel. Okay, we're pointing out all the academically proven effects through various blood tests, et cetera, but on top of all that, if something is healthier and decreases risk, lo and behold, don't you feel it as well, which is really, really important. So good point there, Jennifer. Glad to have you with us. Monica's just saying we can call this abundance diet as well, and the other scarcity diet. Yeah, so again, we see a lot of myths being promoted out there, especially now we see about soy. Common knowledge, pop culture knowledge, is to avoid soy, and what we see here is that soy is health promoting, decreases risks of real serious types of cancer, especially the cancers that threaten women and their female identity. So so what we see here. And then Monica's just saying, what is the 6-day vegan movement? I didn't call it that, Monica. Someone who wrote into me called it that. I am started with this thing called 6-day vegan diet. I'm going to do a project on it, basically discussing that we don't need to be absolutists, and we lose a lot of people with that message that it's 100% or nothing. But if we take a cycle diet approach and reserve other foods for 1 day a week, then we still take a vegan approach and see the benefits. And then over time, you won't even want, on that 7th day, you won't even opt for those things. So, and Tiffany's just saying, as I said before, that she was staying away from soy due to estrogenic effect. And hopefully, Tiffany, my research got through to you, and you know that is now sort of a myth. That's a pop culture myth, and we need to get back there. So, and Tiffany just asking, so I'm safe, I eat no dairy it all, being 100% plant-based, but still eat no soy? Yeah, you should be. I mean, you don't have to eat soy. I'm just saying in terms of the risks that are most pernicious to women in terms of cancer, soy is health promoting, and it decreases risk exponentially. I have other studies that I was going to show, but I'd have to share my whole screen, and I'm running out of time to do that. So, yeah, and Monica's just saying, makes me sick just hearing about milk and the related things, harmful issues involved. Yeah, and again, I go back to, T. Colin Campbell grew up on a dairy farm, and like I said earlier, people who are, say, educate me and let me make my own choice. Here's a man with 50 years of research looking for the truth. And if anyone had a belief bias to support, it would have been him growing up on a dairy farm, and yet he was the one who wrote the China study and all about abandoning dairy and why someone should do so. And then Tiffany asked how soy affects male testosterone levels when consumed on 100% plant-based diet with no dairy. As we see, Tiffany, as I showed there, it's actually dairy that suppresses the testosterone from exogenous estrogens, and it's actually soy that is more protective, and I'll be doing a webinar on food and sex hormones in the future. So, yeah, and Mike Veith is just saying, check out Dr. Greger's videos. He's got a lot of stuff on soy intake in men, and I'll be following up that as well. So spoiler alert there, Mike. But I'll probably end up with the same research and saying the same things. And Tiffany's just saying, thanks. We'll rewatch the full video later. Getting ready for work in New Zealand. Boom. Well, glad to hear from people in New Zealand always. So very important. So Monica, I'll get to the B12 thing in another lecture. That's a webinar on its own as well. Nettie Confetti is just saying, I'm open to hearing the research you're presenting. It's just everything I've read, including research, says that soy is bad for us. Hopefully I've already started debunking that, Annette, but that's pop culture mythology. I just presented you the research. I can show you more another time, or if I even have time at the end of this. But Monica's just saying, thanks for all you share, teach, and do for us. Truly appreciate it. Well, after a day like yesterday, Monica, I appreciate that, because the attack dogs are out yesterday with all my vegan bullcrap. I'm not following you anymore. It's too bad. It's too bad that people are so cemented in their belief systems that they're not open to being educated, and that change is good. And it's always good to evolve and not be hardened in a position, and that's important too. And Tiffany's just saying her husband and her have been plant-based for 6 weeks. Feels great too. Found your protein con job video. Awesome. Thanks, Tiffany. Those people that were so upset and hostile on my post last night about meat eaters having higher BMIs and tend to be more overweight and obese. Boy, they sure wouldn't like the protein con job video. And you can find all my previous webinars and this one over on my YouTube channel as well. And then Tiffany's just adding to that comment, if I could feel 5 years younger, it'd be worth it. 6 weeks and I feel more than 5 years younger. Osteoarthritis, pain, stiffness has disappeared. Yeah, there's tons of anecdotal evidence. The way people start feeling better, the more plant-based they get. And then Matt, glad you could make it. This is who I was referring to, folks, who sends me the research. And Matt, I was going to use the research you sent me, but I can't get it in PowerPoint slides. And I was going to share my screen, but we're running out of time, and I would have to actually re-explain all the academic stuff. So as I was saying, folks, Matt is a pharmacist who is a research junkie in cellular biology, knows a lot about cancer, has his fingers on the pulse of ongoing research, sends me the research. And a lot of it, I told Matt, is just research that's done by scientists for scientists. And if I posted it, I would lose a lot of you, because it's just way too academic in terms of jargon, etc. But the conclusions are the same nonetheless. And Matt's just saying, remember, eating a plant-based diet alters our immune system through our GI bacteria. That will benefit us in all diseases, in protective effects. So, very, very important stuff. Maybe the time of day, we didn't get the amount of viewership that I would have liked, but that's okay. Hit your share buttons. Maybe they'll watch later. So again, folks, women, food, and breast cancer. There is a connection. There is stuff you need to know. And again, up the fiber. And if you're going to be out there, forget your macros, forget your protein grams, forget your calories. Aim to get that minimum of 25 grams of fiber per day. Best if you aimed for actually 50 grams, that would be even better. If you could aim for that high and then forget about measuring the rest, and you will just feel better and better. But there is a connection between women, food, and breast cancer. And there is a connection with ovarian cancer. And like Matt said, basically, it's going to benefit us all in all kinds of ways. So again, fiber and soy and fiber. And again, the mythology of pop culture, thinking that they understand things they don't understand in this sense. Soy being the danger, when actually what people are attaching to soy, they should attach to dairy. It's actually dairy that is the more estrogenic danger than soy ever will be. So that's very, very important as well. So Monica's just giving me some support here that the viewers, while they may be few in numbers at this moment, are smart and wanting and growing in awareness and improvement, not just the numbers. And that's what I said before. I'm just going to keep bringing the truth as I know it through research, education, and experience, and let people deal with that as best they can. But I'll end this the way I started, which was, that Ramones song, just keep on whispering in my ear and telling me all the things that I want to hear because it's true. That's what I like about you. That's why people hit their like buttons on social media, which has nothing to do with evolving and being educated and growing personally. But there are people who will say that, educate me and let me decide for myself. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. And I don't mind always being ahead of the research. And don't forget, when we first started this as well, breaking news, go to Google, the breaking news, type in new study, and then type in quotes, Atkins diet leads to heart failure. And then boom, shakalaka, boom, boom. That happens, that synchronicity that came into a news alert just as I was going live today. So that's it for me, folks, for this week's live webinar, Women, Food, and Breast Cancer, a very important topic. I hope you benefited from it. By all means, please hit your share buttons and tell people about it. And next week, I will see you next time, and hopefully you benefited from being out there and seeing what I had to say and putting a lot of effort into research. Again, shout out and a thank you to Matthew Adcock for sending me the research that he sends me and helping me out with this broadcast. And I will see you all next time.